It was a bright and cheerful afternoon in London. The sun peeked through the clouds, and a light breeze carried the smell of street food and fresh flowers. Crowds of people stood outside Buckingham Palace, hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous royal guards in their tall black hats and red coats. Cameras clicked, laughter filled the air, and children sat on their parents' shoulders to get a better view. Among the crowd was a little girl named Emily. She was 7 years old, with curly brown hair and curious eyes that sparkled with excitement. This was her first visit to London. She held tightly onto her father's hand and looked around with wonder. "There they are," she said, pointing toward the guards. Her parents smiled as she ran a few steps ahead, stopping right in front of the iron gates. She pressed her face gently against the bars and stared. The royal guards stood still as statues. Not a blink, not a smile. They didn't move, even when tourists waved or made silly faces. It was like they were made of stone. Emily was amazed. "Do they ever move?" she asked. Her dad chuckled. "Only when they're changing shifts or marching. They aren't allowed to talk or show emotion. It's part of their job." Emily thought that sounded very hard. How could someone stand so still for so long without even smiling? She looked closer at one of the guards. He was tall and serious, holding a shiny rifle over his shoulder. His face looked calm, but also a little tired. Then an idea popped into Emily's head. She remembered watching a video about the guards before coming to London. Someone had tried to make a guard laugh, but it didn't work. Emily had giggled and said, "Maybe I can do it." She turned to her mom. "I want to try something." Her mom raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking, sweetie?" "I made up a secret signal," Emily said proudly. "Maybe he'll understand it." Her parents exchanged a look, then nodded. "Just don't get too close," her dad said, "and be respectful, okay?" Emily stepped closer to the gate again. She took a deep breath and raised her hands. She moved them in a pattern she had made up, a little wave, a finger tap, then a circle in the air. She repeated it, carefully and with a smile on her face. The guard didn't move. People nearby watched her with interest. Some smiled, others pulled out their phones. Emily stayed focused. She tried the signal again, slower this time. Still nothing. Her smile started to fade. Maybe the guard didn't see her. Maybe he was just too serious. But deep down, she didn't feel like giving up just yet. Something told her this moment might be more special than it looked. And so, with all the hope in her heart, she raised her hands for one more try. Emily stood still in front of the gate, her small hands lifted once again. The crowd around her had grown quiet. Even though many people were walking by, some had stopped to watch the little girl trying to get the attention of a royal guard. She moved her hands in the same pattern. Wave, tap, circle. Her signal was gentle and thoughtful, something she had practiced at home with care. Her eyes stayed on the guard, who stood as still as ever, looking forward with no sign of movement. But Emily didn't give up. She believed her signal meant something special. She didn't want to make the guard laugh or break the rules. She only wanted to see if someone so strong and quiet could notice a child's peaceful message. It was like a game to her, but one that came from the heart. Suddenly, something strange happened. The guard, who had not moved a muscle since she arrived, blinked. It was quick, so fast that no one else seemed to notice. But Emily saw it. Her eyes lit up. She smiled and tried the signal again, just to be sure. Wave, tap, circle. This time something even more surprising followed. The guard, without turning his head or moving his body, gently tapped 2 fingers against his thigh. It was the same rhythm Emily had used in her signal. Her mouth dropped open. Her parents gasped softly behind her. They had seen it too. "Did he just?" her dad whispered. Emily nodded slowly, eyes wide. She couldn't believe it. She had always heard that royal guards never reacted. They were famous for ignoring everyone. But here she was, standing in front of one, and he had responded to her. The people nearby started whispering. Some pointed, unsure of what they had just seen. A man holding the camera looked amazed. "I think she got him to react," he said to someone beside him. Emily's heart raced, not from fear, but from joy. It wasn't about winning or showing off. It felt like a quiet moment shared between her and the guard, like they understood each other without needing any words. The guard didn't move again after that. He went back to his perfect, motionless stance, just like before. It was as if nothing had happened at all. But for Emily, everything had changed. She had seen something few people ever did. A royal guard, known for being completely still, had responded to her secret signal. Her parents smiled at her with pride. That was amazing, her mom said softly. You showed kindness and patience, and somehow he saw that. Emily felt warm inside, not because of the attention, but because of the quiet connection she had made. It was small, but it meant everything to her. And though the guard never moved again, Emily knew that for one brief moment, they had shared something truly special. Emily couldn't stop smiling. She stood quietly, her eyes still on the guard. Even though he had returned to his still and serious pose, she knew what she had seen. It wasn't her imagination. He really had answered her signal, even if only for a second. Her parents stood close by, just as surprised as she was. Tourists nearby began whispering and pointing. A few even clapped softly, though they quickly quieted down out of respect for the guards. No one wanted to cause trouble. Everyone knew the guards had strict rules. Emily's dad leaned down and whispered, "You did something very rare, Emily. Not many people can say a royal guard responded to them." Emily nodded slowly. She didn't fully understand how rare it was, but she felt it in her heart. Something special had just happened, and she would never forget it. Her mom pulled out her phone and showed her the short video she had recorded. "Look," she said, "I caught the moment on camera." Emily watched herself in the video, doing her little signal, and then saw the guard's tiny tap in return. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Can we show Grandma?" she asked. "Of course," her mom said, smiling. A few more people walked over and gently asked if they could see the video. They were careful not to crowd too close or make noise. One man even said, "I've never seen anything like this before." That guard has probably stood there for years and never moved for anyone. As more people heard about the moment, a kind older woman nearby leaned toward Emily and said, "Maybe he saw something special in you. Your signal wasn't silly. It was kind and quiet. Maybe that's why he noticed." Emily looked down at her hands, still thinking about the signal she had made up. It had started as a game, but now it felt more important. It was her own little way of reaching out, and the fact that someone had reached back, even for a second, made her feel proud. After a while, her dad said, "Let's not stay too long. We don't want to cause a scene." Emily nodded and gave one last look at the guard. She raised her hand gently in a small wave, but this time she didn't expect anything. The moment had already happened, and that was enough. They started walking away from the gates, joining the flow of tourists heading back toward the main street. Behind them, the guards stood like statues once again, silent and still under the London sky. As they walked, Emily turned to her parents. "Do you think he'll get in trouble?" Her mom looked thoughtful. "I don't know. But it wasn't a big movement. Maybe someone will understand." Emily hoped so. She didn't want anyone to be punished. She just wanted to share a kind moment, and that's exactly what she had done. As Emily and her family walked away from the gates of Buckingham Palace, she couldn't stop thinking about the guard. She kept replaying the moment in her mind, the way his fingers tapped in response to her signal. It had felt like magic, a secret connection that no one else could see. They walked down the path toward the park, where the trees swayed in the breeze, and tourists sat on benches enjoying the day. Emily felt a warm feeling in her chest, like she had done something important. She knew that someday she would tell this story to her friends and family, and they would never believe her. But she didn't mind. The moment had been hers, and that was all that mattered. "So," her dad began, "what do you think about visiting the park next? We can sit down and have some ice cream." Emily smiled. She was hungry after all the excitement. "Yes, please," she said, her voice bright. They made their way to a small ice cream stand by the edge of the park. Emily chose her favorite flavor, strawberry, and took a big bite. The cold, creamy sweetness made her smile even wider, but her thoughts kept returning to the guard. As they sat on a nearby bench, Emily looked up at her dad. "Do you think he was really allowed to do that?" she asked, her voice full of curiosity. Her dad looked at her thoughtfully. Well, the guards have strict rules about staying still and silent. They're supposed to follow those rules carefully. But sometimes people forget that they're human too. Maybe, for just a second, he saw something kind in you and decided to respond. Emily nodded slowly, understanding her dad's words. She wasn't sure if the guard had broken any rules, but she liked to think that maybe he had just decided to be kind. It made her happy to think that her simple signal had made a difference. "What do you think his job is like?" she asked. "Does he ever get tired of standing still?" Her dad chuckled. "I'm sure it gets tiring sometimes. Standing still for so long can't be easy. But it's his job to stand there, looking strong and serious, protecting the palace. It's part of what makes the palace feel safe." Emily thought about that for a moment. The guard's job seemed very hard. He had to be strong, calm, and still, no matter what happened around him. She wondered if he ever got bored or wished he could do something different. But then she thought about the small moment they shared. Maybe the guard didn't need to move or speak to show that he was paying attention. Maybe, just maybe, he understood the importance of small acts of kindness, even from a little girl. As they finished their ice cream, Emily felt content. The day had been full of surprises, and she had learned something valuable. Sometimes, even the smallest actions can create a big impact. And sometimes a small signal can mean more than words ever could. The next day, Emily woke up early. The sun was shining brightly through the window, and the streets of London were already bustling with activity. It was the final day of their trip, and Emily's parents had planned to take her to see some other famous sights in the city. But as they got ready to leave the hotel, Emily couldn't help but think about the royal guard again. "Mom, do you think he'll be there today?" she asked, packing her things into her small backpack. Her mom smiled and zipped up the bag. "Who, the guard? Well, I'm sure he'll be there. It's his job, after all." "I wonder if he'll remember me," Emily said, her voice full of curiosity. "He might," her dad replied, "but it's a big palace. There are many guards, and they all have their jobs to do. But you made an impression. I'm sure he won't forget it." Emily smiled at the thought. She wasn't expecting the guard to recognize her or do anything special, but it felt nice to think that maybe, just maybe, he had remembered the little girl who had made a simple signal. After breakfast, the family walked to the park near Buckingham Palace. It was a beautiful day, and the flowers were in full bloom. Emily ran ahead, feeling the excitement of exploring the city. She glanced toward the gates of the palace and saw that the guards were already standing in their usual spots, tall and still, watching over the gates like sentinels. "There they are," Emily said, pointing toward the guards. Her heart beat a little faster, just like it had yesterday. She hadn't expected to see him again, but here he was. They stood for a moment, admiring the palace and the beautiful gardens, but Emily couldn't stop her eyes from wandering back to the guard. He was in the same position as before, looking straight ahead, his expression unreadable. As Emily studied him from a distance, she noticed something different this time. A small group of tourists was standing near the gate, trying to take photos with the guards in the background. One of the tourists was making funny faces, hoping to get the guard to laugh, but he didn't react. Emily watched quietly, waiting to see if anything would happen. To her surprise, the guard's eyes flicked over toward her. For just a moment, their gazes met. He didn't blink, and he didn't move. But for a second, Emily felt as though he recognized her. It wasn't a big moment, but it made her heart skip a beat. It was like a silent acknowledgement, a small connection between them. "Did you see that?" she whispered to her parents. Her dad smiled. "I think he did. But remember, he's doing his job. He's not allowed to react too much." Emily nodded, her thoughts still on the quiet moment they had shared. It wasn't about making him break the rules or getting a big reaction. It was about the understanding that sometimes small gestures can have big meaning, even in a world full of rules and expectations. As the family walked away from the gates, Emily felt peaceful. She had learned something important on this trip. It wasn't just about seeing famous places or taking pictures. It was about the little moments that made the world feel connected, like a secret handshake between strangers. As the days passed, Emily couldn't stop thinking about her time in London. She had learned so much more than she expected. Her family had visited famous landmarks, tried delicious food, and seen the sights. But in the back of her mind, the moment with the royal guard stayed with her. The trip was almost over and they were packing up to head back home. Emily looked out of the hotel window one last time. She could see the busy streets, the people rushing to work, and the famous red buses driving by. It all seemed so far away now, yet so close in her memories. "Mom, Dad, do you think we'll ever come back?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. Her mom smiled as she zipped up her suitcase. "Maybe one day. We'd had such a great time here. But remember, it's not just about visiting the famous places. It's about the moments that make the trip special." Emily nodded. She understood. It wasn't the landmarks or the museums that had made the trip unforgettable. It was the small, quiet moments, like the one with the guard. That was the moment she would always remember. Before they left for the airport, Emily and her parents decided to take one final walk near Buckingham Palace. They had a little extra time, and Emily wanted to see the palace once more. When they arrived, the familiar sight of the palace gates and the royal guards greeted them. Emily took a deep breath and smiled. She had learned to appreciate the calm stillness of the guards, their dedication to their job, and the way they stood watch over the palace. "I wonder if he's here," Emily whispered, looking at the row of guards. "Maybe," her dad said with a chuckle. "But remember, they're always changing shifts. There are many guards." Emily smiled and nodded. She didn't expect to see the same guard again. After all, there were so many other people in the world, and it was a busy city. But the thought of the guards still brought a feeling of warmth to her heart. As they stood there, Emily noticed a group of tourists nearby. They were taking pictures of the guards, laughing and pointing. One of them waved at a guard, but he didn't react. Emily smiled to herself. She remembered how she had tried to make the guard smile with her secret signal, and how he had responded, even if it was just for a moment. "It's funny," Emily said softly to her mom. "People always try to make them smile or laugh, but maybe they don't understand that some things are special because they're quiet." Her mom nodded. "Exactly. Sometimes the best moments are the ones that don't need any noise or big gestures." As they turned to leave the palace grounds, Emily looked back one last time. She didn't need a big goodbye. The moment with the guard, the peaceful signal, and the quiet connection were enough. That would be her memory of London, the memory she would carry with her forever. She was grateful for everything she had experienced, but most of all, she was grateful for the quiet, beautiful moments that could change a day, or even a life. Back home, Emily felt a little sad that their London adventure was over. She missed the bright streets, the tall buildings, and the peaceful moments by the palace. But she was also happy to be back in her own room, surrounded by her favorite books and toys. One afternoon after school, Emily sat at the kitchen table, flipping through her photo album from the trip. She looked at pictures of Big Ben, the London Eye, and the beautiful parks they had visited. But what stood out the most was the picture of the royal guard, standing tall and still in front of the palace gates. It was the only photo she had taken of him. Her mom walked into the kitchen and smiled when she saw Emily looking through the album. "You look like you're deep in thought," she said. "I am," Emily replied. "I keep thinking about the guard. Do you think he remembers me?" Her mom sat down beside her. "I don't know. But I do know this. What you did was special. Not everyone can say they shared a moment with the royal guard. You made a connection, even if it was just for a second." Emily nodded. She liked the idea of that their quiet connection had been real, even if it was small. "Do you think I'll ever see him again?" Emily asked. Her mom thought for a moment. "Maybe one day. But even if you don't, what you learned from that moment is more important. You learned that sometimes a small gesture can make a big difference." Emily smiled. She was starting to understand what her mom meant. The trip to London hadn't been just about visiting famous places or taking pictures. It was about the little moments that made it all feel real. The quiet, unspoken connections that couldn't be captured in a photo, but would always be remembered in the heart. Later that week, Emily's class had a Share Your Vacation Story Day. When it was her turn, she stood in front of her classmates, holding the photo of the guard. She started telling them about London, about the beautiful parks and the famous landmarks. But when she reached the part about the guard, her voice grew softer. "One day, I stood in front of Buckingham Palace, and I tried to make the guard notice me. I made a signal with my hands, just a small wave and a tap. And for a second, he reacted. He didn't move, but he tapped his fingers, just like I did. It was quiet, but it felt important, like we understood each other, even without words. Her classmates listened carefully, some nodding and others looking amazed. They didn't quite understand how special that moment was, but they could tell it meant a lot to Emily. It wasn't about making him laugh or break the rules, Emily continued. It was about sharing a quiet moment, even if no one else noticed. When she finished, her teacher smiled warmly. That's a beautiful story, Emily. It shows that sometimes the smallest moments can have the biggest impact. As Emily sat back down, she felt proud. The story of the Royal Guard wasn't just hers anymore. She had shared it with others, and they had listened. And in that moment, Emily realized that sometimes a simple act of kindness could leave a lasting impression, no matter where you were or who you were with. Months passed since their trip to London, but Emily still thought about the Royal Guard. Every time she saw a picture of Buckingham Palace or heard someone talk about the guards, her mind would wander back to that special moment. She would remember the quiet connection, the tap of the guard's fingers, and how she had felt in that instant, like they had shared something only they knew. One sunny Saturday, Emily was playing in her backyard when her mom called out to her, "Emily, come inside. I have something for you." Curious, Emily ran inside. Her mom was holding a small package wrapped in colorful paper. "What's this?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "It's a surprise," her mom said with a smile. "Go ahead, open it." Emily carefully tore off the paper, revealing a little wooden box. It was plain, but beautiful, with delicate carvings along the edges. Inside the box was a small card. Emily picked up the card and read it aloud. For Emily, who knows that the smallest moments can have the biggest impact. Always remember the quiet connections. There was no name signed, but Emily knew exactly what it meant. It was from her mom, but it felt like it had been a gift from the guard himself. "Do you like it?" her mom asked. "I love it," Emily said softly, her fingers brushing the box. "Thank you." Her mom smiled and hugged her tightly. "I thought you'd like it. You've learned something important, Emily. It's not about grand gestures or big events. Sometimes the little things, the quiet moments, are the most important." Emily nodded, feeling a wave of understanding wash over her. She realized her mom was right. That small, quiet moment with the guard had taught her something valuable. It wasn't about getting attention or making a big impact. It was about being kind, patient, and understanding, even in the smallest ways. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a soft shade of pink, Emily sat outside with her new box. She held it gently in her hands, thinking about her trip to London, the Royal Guard, and everything she had learned. She understood now that sometimes it was the quiet, small gestures that meant the most. She wasn't sure if she would ever see the guard again. She didn't know if he would remember her. But she knew one thing for sure. The connection they had shared was enough. It didn't need to be remembered by anyone else. It was something that lived quietly in her heart. As Emily gazed at the setting sun, she felt a peaceful smile form on her face. The world was full of big things, loud things, and busy things, but it was the quiet moments that made everything feel real. And in her heart, Emily knew that she would always treasure that quiet moment with the Royal Guard, no matter how many years passed.